What's the key to starting those seeds indoors in February? Frost dates. It's all about the frost dates. Welcome back, friends. Talking about starting some seeds indoors in February. We're going to talk about growing some herbs, brassicas, and some nightshades. But first, let's get on those frost dates. It's an interesting story, actually. So on frost dates, you got to know what your source is. We use the Farmer's Almanac, zip code right down to where we're at. But the point is, what they report is a 70th percentile, 70%. That's what average means. It doesn't mean average like mean or mode. It is actually a percentile, okay? And in this case, it's not the median. It's not 50%. It's 70%. But that means you could still get a frost after that date. This year, it's April 13th. They get their data from the NOAA, who has updated up to 2020 now. So they moved back our average frost date last from April 20th back to April 13th. NOAA also tracks average freezes, probability for freezes, and we did have a freeze in 2021, May 9th, Mother's Day, and knocked out a lot of peppers and tomatoes in our area. We did okay. We got a microclimate, but frost is frost and freeze is freeze. It depends on what you have out there. Brassicas are more cold hardy than nightshades, tomatoes, and peppers, so they could survive it better. So if you're going to start your seeds in February, based on that average frost date, and you want to hit it perfectly, you're a risk taker, because there's still a 30% chance you're guessing wrong, right? So if you don't want to take the risk, whatever the recommendation is, just scooch it back like 1 week or 2 weeks, and then that puts you further into the spring, lessens your chance of getting a late frost, but still giving you a jump to get basically 2 crops in. One for the spring, and then when you start again roughly in the spring, you'll put them out in the summer and they'll be ready for the fall. Well, let's start with herbs first. Look at my notes here. These are my notes. It's not a web page. Herbs. Now, herbs, obviously you can start all of this stuff outside once it warms up. Herbs take a long time to germinate. Most do. And if you wait to do that, it's going to take so long to get your herbs. You're going to end up at the nursery buying some starts. And the whole point here is to save money, right? So let's see here. The big 3 sisters, let's call them: celery, oregano, rosemary, thyme, sage, and basil. Now, I know celery is not an herb, but it is in the parsley family, so we're going to throw it in here. Celery, you can start it on the 1st, and oregano the 1st, rosemary the 1st, thyme the 1st. Those 4 you can start on the 1st. Based on my average last frost, which is April 13th, just updated to the 13th, not the 20th. So if I start celery on the 1st, I can put it out on the 16th of March. It's a 6-week process, okay? Wait, that has nothing to do with the frost, but celery is cold hardy, right? Now, by the way, when I say put it out, anything we're talking about here, you want to slowly get it acclimated. You know, you start about 10, 14 days before, just a few minutes a day, then a few minutes more, until you get it up to about a half hour, then maybe 45 minutes and so forth. Just remember, light everything except sun. You want shade, partial shade, but you want light rain, light breeze at the most. You want to get them acclimated. You don't want to put them out there and let the elements annihilate your seedlings. So anyway, I can get celery out in 6 weeks. Oregano, wouldn't put that out till the 13th. Okay, so that's a 10-week process, Feb 1st to April 13, that average last frost. Now, if I'm risk averse, I would kick it back, maybe even to the end of March, to make sure I'm past the date. Rosemary, April 20th, an extra week there, 11 weeks. My thyme I'm going to put out, if I were to do it, April 13th. Now, oregano, rosemary, thyme, particularly rosemary and thyme, if you already have some established, which we have plenty of that stuff around here, you don't need to start them at seed. You just take some clippings in the spring, some root hormone, and make more. Right, it's a different way to propagate it. In the thyme, that particular plant, even though it's woody, it's a little more fragile. But I would still, if I were going to start it from seed, I would still shoot February 1st and put it out on the 13th to give it a chance to get established. You could use a clouche, little bell, little plastic bell. I'll throw a picture up there. To protect it somewhat, anything you put out early, you can use that technique if you want to. But those are the 4 of the 6 sisters you can start on the 1st. Celery, oregano, rosemary, thyme. And then the middle of February, sage and basil, both going out on the 13th, both therefore 8-week processes. Middle of February to the middle of April. If you're not a risk taker, just put it in at the end of February or the first day of March, and then stick it out there late April, early May. And again, the sage and basil, the sage is obviously woody. We're probably going to start some of that from seed this year because our sage is getting a little long in the tooth. The basil, we're going to grow a lot of basil. Now, this is about seed starting, but you got to think, well, what am I going to use it for? Basil is a fine companion. I'll spit it out eventually. Basil is a fine companion plant for a lot of things, including tomatoes. That's what these stakes are. I'm standing in our pasted tomato area for 2023. Basil, onion, there's already onion down here, and marigolds. Onion, hello Beth, marigold, hello Voon, and Cat. Those 4 things go together. They're awesome together, and really are just a pepper away from making a salsa. Anyway, the basil, we will plant a lot of that because they will be staggered through here, not so much to eat, but as a companion plant. Our herb station, probably can't see it on there, but it's over to my left. We will put some basil over there, and we're growing 3 types of that this year. So that's your 6 sisters. I know celery's not really an herb, but celery, oregano, rosemary, thyme, sage, and basil. Okay, back at the table, because we're talking about brassicas. We're at about 3 here. Cauliflower, cabbage, and broccoli. We're only starting cabbage, but you can start all 3 of those in mid-February and put them out in the middle of March. Why? Because they're cold hardy. We're throwing cabbage in this raised bed behind us, along with some root crops, some rutabaga. In fact, you can start broccoli and cabbage seeds as early as December 1st in our area if you want to, and put them out because they are cold hardy. I would just say, whatever you're doing, if you're starting the seeds inside, other than you're going to start them really late, but if you're going Feb 15 and putting them out in March, use the clouche system, protect them a little bit. This is also handy, by the way, for keeping vertebrates, cats, whatever, off of your plants, and you can stake them so the wind doesn't blow them away, and when they get big enough, then you take them off. I'll leave a link for this down there too. This channel's not affiliate. We don't have any sponsors or anything. We don't make any money off the channel, actually. But I'll leave a link so you can find that quickly in case you're interested in that. We have a stack. I think we have 10 of them. They come in handy in the spring for all kinds of crops, not just brassicas. We're also trying some rutabaga. There's a little shot there. It's just an experiment. I would not recommend starting rutabaga in a seed cell tray indoors because it's a root crop It's a mix between a cabbage and a turnip. It's a root crop. Generally, you don't want to start those inside and transfer them because it shocks the roots, and that's the edible part that you're looking for. But my channel, we do a lot of experiments. The old friends, they know this. So I'm just seeing if I can do it. Okay, and the third thing you can start is actually for warm season. Nightshades, peppers, tomatoes, eggplants, bell pepper and jalapeno, for example, or sweet pepper and hot pepper if you want. Let me look at my notebook here. Feb 1st, you can start those and put them out on the 20th, 1 week after. And the reason for that is peppers, just like tomatoes and eggplant, if you get that last frost, as I spoke about earlier, that Mother's Day thing, you're running a very, very high risk. That being said, I always risk a tomato. I've put a tomato or two out in my day in March, not protecting them with these, not these, but containers, flip them upside down, just to see. I will say I started a Cherokee like that one time, and its trunk was more like a tree. That weather really toughened it up. It was a great tomato. Anyway, I'm not recommending that. We experiment here. So for peppers, start on Feb 1st, get them out April 20th. And then tomatoes and eggplants, you can start those in the middle of February. But do not mess around with that frost date. Remember, the key to all of this is pay attention to the frost date. And for tomatoes and eggplants, you want to set them out well after the frost date. Tomatoes, April 20th. By then, for this area, you're out at least an 80% chance that that's the end. And then eggplants is April 27. Eggplants and tomatoes are both suspect to that cool, but eggplants also take a long time to develop. I've had a lot of conversations over the years with people frustrated with their eggplants. They take a while to germinate, and then once germinating and growing, they do take a while to produce fruit. Just a general rule of thumb for nightshades: tomatoes first, peppers, and then eggplant, as far as how fast they're going to provide. Do not give up on your eggplants. Give them a shot. For a black beauty, let it get like fist size, and when it gets shiny, it's ready. Don't wait too long. When it's shiny, it's good to go. If it gets shiny and then dull, it's going to be bitter. It just takes it a while to get there. It's not a tomato. If you think about the difference of what's the difference in the fruit, what's inside between a tomato and an eggplant, there's a lot more going on in an eggplant, obviously, so just give it time. Well, what did I leave out? I left out a lot, and before you drop comments about sowing directly in the ground, we got a video on that too coming up. This is strictly about starting seeds inside. But any other comments? What did I leave out? What else could you start inside right now? What would you start inside right now? And if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe. See y'all on the next one, and happy gardening.